I'm glad I don't have to preach on that text. There's a lot packed into that. And actually, Eric and Ron have already done a beautiful job of cracking it open this morning, as well as all of you in prayer. It's amazing how the Spirit works in this place. By the way, I heard Ron had 6 years on Valentine's Day. Well, I will say a few things, because there is a lot packed into these verses. But I hope I don't get in the way of the spirit of what they say. We're having a funeral here tomorrow of one of our friends who died, and I was trying to explain to his family as we stood in here and talked about this church. I tried to explain to them what happens here. And what happens here is amazing, and it shouldn't happen, but it does, and it happens every week. And it's the way we love each other. I said, our culture is sort of divided, and there are people that have a lot of different politics in this church. There are people that have a lot of different theologies in this church and come from a lot of church backgrounds. But it's amazing because those things just drop away because you put love first and you love one another. So anything else I say, don't ever forget that. I never want to get in the way of the way you love one another. Well, this text is telling us to love one another. In 11 verses, it's sort of like giving us a rule of life that we could all live by. And some of it's a little tricky to figure out. It has a lot in common with the 12-step program laid out by Bill Wilson and Bob Smith in Akron, Ohio back in 1935. And there's one phrase in it that we've known as the golden rule, as Eric was pointing out to the kids. And what is that?
Do unto others
as you would have them do unto you. Wow. What a simple rule of life. What a basic step. Imagine what life would be like if we asked that question every time we reacted to something that happened to us. To pause. Did you know that every single world religion has some version of this rule at its core? I have a list of them somewhere, but every single world religion says this is really important. Why don't we focus on that instead of all our differences? I think sometimes people use religion as a weapon rather than as a tool of love. And the Bible can be used like that too. But I think the Bible is really clear on this. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Kindness, love, mercy. Reading the Bible is a tricky thing, and it's something to be approached with a lot of humility, because there's often more we don't know than we do know. Some say they believe in a literal interpretation of the Bible, but I don't think that's even possible. We should read it with a lot of care and a lot of humility. There's so much we don't understand. For instance, in this passage, we are told that if someone strikes us on one cheek, we should turn our face and invite them to strike us on the other cheek. We are told that if someone steals from us, we are not apt to ask for our stuff back. These things just don't make sense. Many a poor interpreter of the Bible has used this text to send an abused person back to their abuser. Many good intended ministers have said to a spouse, go back to the person that is beating you. Turn the other cheek. It says so in the Bible. But I don't know about you, but I have never seen the bumper sticker that says, be a doormat for Jesus. And I don't want to see it. There's a difference between taking the Bible seriously and taking it literally. John Dominic Crossan, who is a biblical scholar, puts it this way. My point, once again, he says, is not that those ancient people told literal stories and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but they told them symbolically and we are now dumb enough to take them literally. A literal interpretation of this morning's passage misses its genius. So often we miss a turn of phrase. New Testament scholar Walter Wink helps us see this passage in a sort of a brighter light by saying that Jesus' words in this passage come as an act of nonviolent resistance to oppression. Wink says that we first need to understand a little bit the culture in which Jesus lived. And this is where it kind of gets fun, because we have these cultural phrases and we say, go jump in a lake. We don't mean it literally, right? But the same thing happens in the Bible, but we sometimes miss these phrases. So I'm going to take you back to first century Palestine. And let's just say that the thing about if someone strikes you in the face. Well, first of all, in this culture, you would only strike somebody in the face with your right hand, okay? The left hand was used for bathroom duties. And there were laws for everything. And there was a law you never would have struck someone with your left hand. Now, if you were striking them with your right hand, if they were inferior to you and you were their oppressor or superior, you'd strike them with the back of your hand. Now, if they were an equal, you'd strike them with the palm of your hand. So when Jesus told people, if they strike you with your hand, turn your cheek, that meant that would force the oppressor to strike you as an equal. So this is why you turn the other cheek. The same is true with the example about the coat. If somebody asks for your coat, give them your shirt also. Well, remember, we're living in an age there of Jewish law, and there was a law for everything. And there was a law that if you owed somebody something, they could ask for you to repay. Now, if you didn't have the thing you owed, if you didn't have money, and you didn't have land, that they could ask for your coat. But if they asked for your coat, and you gave them your shirt too, you'd be standing there naked. And that would put them to shame. Because there was a way in which one could ask for having debts repaid. There's power in responding to hatred with love. And Jesus is teaching this whole new ethic. You've heard it said, kill them with kindness, or when they go low, go high. Well, this is what he's talking about. Love your enemies, Jesus says, and do good to those who hate you. This is the ethic that moved Martin Luther King Jr. to kneel down with many brothers and sisters before water hoses and snarling police dogs. Many people thought he was crazy. Only violence can fight violence, they said. But the authorities didn't know what to do with this. They knew the power of violence. They knew how to keep powerless victims in their place. But they hadn't encountered victims who refused to be victims. Victims who refused to fight back with violence, who instead claimed the power of love to reshape the battle entirely. Life is difficult, and we are all fighting a hard battle. What does it look like to forgive one another? What does it look like to pray for our enemies? Sometimes it's as simple as responding to hatred with kindness, with love, with grace. We cannot afford to let petty differences divide us. We don't need to agree with each other politically. We don't need to agree with each other theologically. In fact, we don't need to agree about anything. We just need to love each other before it's too late. There are people out there dying for what we have. Amen.